The wind tore across Dust Creek like a whip of ghosts, dry and mean, lifting grit into the darkening sky. The firelight flickered weakly against the dusk, casting long shadows of men huddled close to their whiskey. Laughter rang hollow. A deal was being struck. The girl sat silent on the edge of a battered wagon, her face streaked with dirt, eyes flat and distant. The men didn't look at her. She wasn't part of the conversation, just a piece of it. In a time when men owned land, cattle, and sometimes souls, a girl was sold for a jug of corn whiskey. Elijah Briggs stood a few paces back, the collar of his duster high against the wind. His horse shifted restlessly behind him, sensing its rider's tension. Elijah had come into town for seed and medicine. He hadn't planned to witness a soul being traded like a mule. But there she was, barely 12, maybe 13, legs dangling, hands clasped like she'd been born holding her breath. He didn't recognize the drunk at first, just another man hollowed out by rot gut and time. But then the light hit his face. He remembered him. Name was Porter or something close. Used to be a trapper until the bottle took what teeth and decency he had left. Deaf-mute, the man slurred. Good as gone. Useless. One of the other men barked a laugh. Then, why are you trying to sell her? Elijah stepped forward. His boots thudded like gunshots on the hard-packed ground. I'll take her. They looked at him, startled. Porter blinked. What? I said I'll take her. Elijah repeated, voice low but sharp. You want trade? I'll trade. He reached into his coat and pulled out a silver pocket watch, its chain broken, its face cracked. Then 3 gold coins, worn, old, Confederate. It was all he had left from his time in the war. The men watched, quiet now. Porter hesitated, greed wrestling with something darker in his face. Then he snatched the watch and coins and waved Elijah, off like swatting a fly. She's yours. The girl didn't move. Elijah walked to her slowly, held out a hand. She looked at it, then at him. And without a word, slid down from the wagon and followed. They left as the fire cracked behind them, the laughter of drunk men receding into the night. The trail to Elijah's ranch stretched long and empty, a ribbon of dust beneath a blood-orange sky. They rode in silence. Elijah spoke sometimes, not to make conversation, just to fill the quiet that pressed against his ears. You ever been out this way? He asked once. No answer. Used to be Comanche country. Still is, in a way. Land never forgets. Still. Silence. He studied her from the corner of his eye. She didn't flinch at the sound of hooves, didn't look around when the coyotes howled. She just held onto the saddle horn with quiet hands and kept her eyes forward. You got a name? He asked. Nothing. He sighed. Lark, he said. I'll call you Lark. Quiet little bird, ain't you? She blinked but didn't react. At the ranch, the horses whinnied low as they dismounted. The wind had died down. Only the creaking of the gate and the crunch of gravel broke the stillness. Inside, the cabin smelled of dry wood and old sorrow. Elijah lit the oil lamp, then the fire. Lark stood in the doorway, watching. You hungry? He asked. She didn't respond. He warmed some beans and bread anyway, set them on a plate. She only touched the food when he guided her hand to it, ate with small bites mechanically, like she'd forgotten how to chew. Later, as he dozed near the hearth, she sat near the fire, legs folded beneath her. The flames played shadows across her face. Her eyes didn't drift or dull. They stayed, sharp, alert. She didn't look afraid, just far away, like her soul had walked off and left her body behind. She didn't blink when he dropped a kettle, didn't twitch at the clap of thunder outside. Deaf, he thought. No question. But as he turned to climb into bed, he caught a sliver of her gaze. She was watching him, following him quietly, closely, and she never missed a thing. The days fell into a rhythm, as if the land itself breathed through the labor. Elijah rose early and found Lark already awake, standing by the barn with that same stillness she always wore. He began teaching her the work, feeding the horses, hauling buckets to the troughs, splitting logs, sweeping ash from the hearth. She caught on fast, too fast. She moved like someone who'd been around work all her life, not like a girl who'd been left to rot in a wagon. When he showed her how to knead dough, her fingers moved precisely, copying him before he even finished the motion. When he stacked logs, she copied his stance exactly, right down to the set of his shoulders. She didn't meet his eyes, but she never missed a detail. She watched, learned, mirrored. It was like she could read the air itself. Deaf or not, she seemed to feel every shift in the wind. One afternoon, Elijah squatted near a patch of dry weeds by the fence, pointing out a trail winding through the dust. With a sharp gesture, he mimed a snake's slither, then drew a line across his neck, warning, "Her." She nodded with no reaction, no fear, no curiosity, just a flat acknowledgement. Later that week, he was fixing the hinges on the barn door when he froze. Something wasn't right. A cold needle of instinct pricked the back of his neck. Slowly, he turned his head, and there it was, a rattlesnake coiled, tongue flickering just behind him. Before he could speak or move, there was a flash of motion. Lark appeared, silent as smoke, and brought down a rake with both hands. The snake thrashed, struck at the air, then lay still. Elijah turned, stunned. He hadn't made a sound. Nothing had warned her. She had heard it, the rattle. But when he stared at her, questions teetering on his tongue, she dropped her eyes and walked away without a word. That night, the sky split with thunder. Lightning flared across the plains. Rain slapped the windows, wind screaming through the eaves. Elijah tossed in his sleep, trapped in the clutches of memory. In his dream, men screamed. A bugle call rang out over the sound of cannon fire. Blood sprayed across the dirt. He shouted, "Orders." His hands were soaked, his lungs burned. He woke with a gasp, drenched in sweat. She was there. Lark stood in the doorway, pale in the firelight, her nightgown clinging to her thin frame. She said nothing, just crossed the room and reached out, placing her hand gently on his forearm. He stared at her, at those small fingers, and something inside him broke. He didn't sob, he didn't shout, he just cried. For the men he'd left behind, for the wife he buried too soon, for the son who never took his first breath, and for the silent girl who stood with him now, asking nothing, offering everything. A week later, a peddler rode into the valley with a mule and a cart full of junk. He called himself Percy, said he had coffee, bullets, needles, and stories. Elijah met him near the gate, hand on his sidearm. Percy was the kind of man who smiled too long and looked too much. Lark stood on the porch, watching. Percy spotted her and whistled. "Ain't she a pretty little thing? Yours?" Elijah's jaw tightened. "She's under my roof, that's all you need to know." "Quiet type, huh?" Percy said with a grin that curdled the air. "I like 'em that way." Elijah stepped forward. "You're done here." Percy held up his hands and backed off with a chuckle, spitting tobacco into the dirt. "Ain't no harm in lookin', friend." Elijah didn't say a word, just stood there until the peddler turned his mule around and left. Lark saw it all, saw the way Elijah's hands trembled after. The storm rolled in that night without mercy. The wind howled like wolves. The rain came sideways. The roof leaked through old seams. One of the horses kicked the fence loose. Elijah rushed out with a lantern, calling orders that vanished into the thunder. In the confusion, he didn't see her slip away. Lark ran into the storm, barefoot and wild, toward the paddock. The foal was out, barely 2 weeks old, whimpering and staggering in the mud. She didn't hesitate. Elijah found her minutes later, soaked to the skin, cradling the tiny creature in her lap beneath a leaning tree, her dress clinging to her like wet paper. Her teeth chattered, but she wouldn't let go of the foal. He dropped to his knees beside her, panting. "Why would you run into a storm like that, girl?" She didn't answer. Her lips trembled, her eyes welled, but no tears fell. He wrapped his coat around both of them. She let him. The foal nuzzled between them, and in that moment he saw something not in her hands or her eyes, but in the silence between them. She wasn't just deaf, she wasn't just silent, she was choosing. Silence. And she had a reason. It started with a spoon. One quiet evening, as the sun bled red across the plains and the fire inside the cabin crackled low, Elijah stood behind her. Lark was stoking the embers, her face lit orange by the glow. Without a word, he let a metal spoon fall to the wooden floor. She flinched. He said her name softly, just above a whisper. Lark. She turned to him, eyes wide. He stepped forward, slow and careful, as though approaching a wounded animal. You can hear me. She didn't move. Her fingers tightened on the poker. I'm not angry, he said, gently now. I just want to understand. Her mouth opened, a breath caught, and then, I didn't want to go back, she whispered. It was the first time he'd heard her voice, rough, dry, quiet, but there. I thought, if they thought I was broken, they wouldn't want me. She sat down beside the fire, not looking at him, voice trembling as though the words themselves might bite her. He said my mouth was too loud, that no man wanted. A girl who talked too much, so I stopped talking. Elijah sat beside her. She didn't shrink from him. I could still hear him when he hit me. Every word, every bottle shatter, every time he called me nothing. But if I acted deaf, he didn't yell as much. She swallowed hard, staring at the flames. When he sold me, he said I was finally good for something. I figured, if I stayed quiet, maybe you wouldn't send me back. Elijah didn't speak for a long time. Then he reached over, laid a calloused hand gently over hers. You're safe here, he said, voice low. You don't have to hide anymore. She nodded once, but her eyes stayed on the fire, watching. The embers shift and crack like tiny dying stars. The next morning, the dust carried something foul on the wind. Hoofbeats. Elijah stepped onto the porch, eyes narrowing as 3 riders approached. One was familiar, the man from the wagon, Lark's father. He looked sober but not clean. His clothes were torn, his eyes bloodshot. 2 men flanked him, one holding a folded paper. She's mine, the man said. Got a legal claim here. From the sheriff, she ran off. Elijah's jaw clenched. She didn't run, you sold her. The man spat in the dirt. Drunk talk ain't a contract. You traded her for a bottle, and now I'm taking her back. Elijah stepped forward. No. That was all he said, just one word. But it carried the weight of gunfire. The father dismounted. You gonna stand between a man and his daughter? Elijah nodded. I'll do more than that. The first punch came fast. One of the hired men caught Elijah in the gut. He doubled over, gasping. Lark watched from the barn, hidden behind a stack of feed sacks. Her fists clenched. Her breath caught. She watched Elijah take another blow, staggering back. Blood on his lip, knees buckling. She looked at her hands, at the dirt, at the man who had broken her. And she stepped into the light. She's not going back! The scream tore from her throat like thunder. The men froze. Elijah looked up, shocked. Her father turned, eyes wide. She screamed again, louder this time. He doesn't own me! It was as if the land itself held its breath. Elijah surged up, tackled the closest man. A gun fired, sharp, sudden. Someone shouted. The father stumbled back, clutching his side. Blood bloomed across his shirt. The 2 hired men fled, their courage running with the gun smoke. Elijah dropped to one knee, gasping. Lark ran to him, sobbing now. Real tears. You're all right, she said. You're all right. He smiled through bloodied teeth. Told you weren't broken. The father lay moaning in the dirt. But no one helped him. He'd come to take something that wasn't his anymore. Weeks passed. The wounds healed slowly. Lark stayed. She spoke more now. Quietly, not often, but enough. Each word was a victory, each sentence a rebellion. One evening, Elijah rested in his old rocking chair while Lark read aloud from a Bible worn soft with use. Her voice was low, warm, steady. The chickens clucked outside. The wind was gentle. She closed the book and walked outside, humming as she tossed feed into the coop. Elijah leaned his head back and smiled. Not because the ranch was healed or the past forgotten. but because the silence was finally gone, not filled with noise, but with peace. Narration? Sometimes silence is a prison, and sometimes it's a shield. But when the right voice breaks through, even the hardest men remember how to listen. She was never deaf. She was never broken. She was surviving. And now, she was home. If this story touched you, share your thoughts below. Hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more gripping frontier tales that remind us of the strength it takes to be heard.